Go ahead and start Xcode as soon as you guys get logged in, as always, if you don't mind. Sir, go ahead and start Xcode to get logged in. Hello, sir. There you go. And you can go ahead and start Xcode as soon as you get logged in.
Yep. I went through an exercise where they had the hide keyboard.
What now?
The hide keyboard.
What about it?
I went through an exercise. It's pretty much like the one in the book.
It is a little different because we're using a scroll control. We're using a scroll viewer.
I noticed, I think I'm on Xcode, maybe Xcode 9 instead of 8.
Pretty close. There's a little difference, but do you need upstairs? Get upstairs?
No, do I just need to follow the directions in the lab assignment?
Do what now?
Do I just have to follow the directions in the lab assignment or the PDFs?
Was that on the, was that for one time?
Yeah, for one time. I got to make up the lab.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah, just
Is
follow
everything in
directions.
there?
Just connecting to computers all you're going to
Okay.
do. Yeah, just let me know when you're done with it. Just submit that you
Steph
completed
can
it.
give me access. I
Yeah.
haven't gone up there yet.
Yeah, that's fine. Nope, you're good. If you don't have a handout yet, we have one up here I need you to pick up. before we get started. Make sure you log in with the boot camp user if you haven't already, which is up here on CIS280 boot camp. All right, well, let's get started here. How's everybody doing tonight? Okay. We're going to be starting week 6 tonight with Hide Keyboard. Hopefully you have Xcode up and running. We'll jump right into it. But before we do, I want to talk about what Hide Keyboard is all about. I did send an email to everybody. If you do have any late work to turn in, I will accept through next Wednesday. No late points taken off. So avail yourself to that and take advantage of it. So when you're using mobile apps, one of the main functionalities in mobile apps is for every app you've ever used and is hiding the keyboard, where basically you go in the text box, you type something in, tap away, and it hides. You have to code that in and function that in. By default, it's the keyboard won't go away by default. So we're going to learn tonight, this week, how to hide the keyboard. Another popular tool to use on your interface is a scroll view, to where you can utilize as much as the interface as possible, and you'll see that tonight as well in the contact app, which kind of simulates a contact database, but it's all in one view. Enter the contacts at the top, hit save, and it goes to the bottom. Go back to the top, keep going back and forth, and it's using one view with multiple what's called CG floats, determining where it's pointed at on the app. And so handling keyboard inputs is pretty basic on keyboard inputs. What you'll learn tonight, you can apply to every app you ever create in iOS. It's not really changed over time. Yes. It's already being recorded. And so handling keyboard inputs, basically, again, is something that's used for every single app. This one can be repeated in multiple apps. So we're going to do in just a second an in-class exercise. Instead of downloading a completed app, I'm going to start from scratch on an app. I'll show you what the completed app is going to look like here in a second. You have in front of you should have 2 handouts, one that says Hide Keyboard on the front of it, and the second handout is just the code for the view controller, okay? And this is also found on the GitHub link that I'll show you in a second, where you can go to and look at as well. So this chapter here, if you've not yet read this chapter, or it's really a small chapter on just interactability with iOS, goes over iOS 9, which is very similar to iOS 11, not much difference. Goes through how to create a quasi or an application, go in and set the application, put some constraints on it, and then finally at the end, adding actions and outlets. And I'll get to the piece here on the hiding part, which is coming up. I think it converts Fahrenheit to Celsius and back and forth. So here, when you enter in the Celsius or the Fahrenheit, it converts it to Celsius. And up to this point, we've not coded in that hiding piece. It goes on down further and shows how that code is then added into your view controller, to where when you tap away or hit the return key, that keyboard goes away. So let's see here. So here it is right here. It's called the touches begin, which we'll look at tonight in our app. So touches begin means whenever you touch anything outside of a view or a view itself, outside of an object, like say you don't touch so you have on there a whole bunch of text boxes like we're going to do tonight. This one here is converting Celsius to Fahrenheit. So just one text box. It's called temp text. If you touch outside, anywhere outside that text box, it's going to end the edit, meaning it's going to hide the keyboard. So that's a real simple example in the book that it gives you. Tonight we're going to do a little bit more. It's not advanced, but one that's used more common, which is putting a hiding functionality in a scroll view. This is the discussion for tonight on this screen, the discussion podcast. The one at the bottom is a podcast only on the in-class exercise and the take-home. And so avail yourself to that, walks you through step-by-step how to do it, along with what we're going to go over tonight. Let's see if I can get this up and running now. See if this completed one runs for us here, so I can show it to you. Okay, so when the app ran, you notice that's first name, last name, email, view, contacts, and save. And I'm going to go ahead and type my first name there on the top. I'll tap away, and you'll notice the keyboard goes away. Come back into here. And if the keyboard ever goes away in the simulator, which it will sometimes, if you do a Command K command on your keyboard, Command K, it'll bring it back. Command plus K, bring back, and the K stands for keyboard. If it ever goes away, you can bring it back that way when you're testing it. Would not go away on a real device, but on simulator it does sometimes. I'm going to type in my last name, email, and you'll notice when I tap in each text box, what do you notice what's happening? Do you notice what's happening here? When I tap in it, it's going up to the top, right? It's utilizing every single millimeter of this interface with a scroll view, because these objects that we're going to look at here, that we're going to create this app tonight, is on top of a scroll view, which allows you to manipulate where it shows up in the app. So there's all three fields. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And it jumps down to the bottom, but you might think it goes to another page, or the user might think it's actually just one view with a huge scroll view on it. When I click back, it goes back to the top. And when I go back, it's actually utilizing 0 in the top of the screen to go back to the top. You'll notice it cleared out these fields. If I put in another contact, now it adds a second contact there. And if I just want to view it, go back down. Again, all one view, all using hiding keyboard, scroll view, and CG float. When I click on this button here, this view contacts, it's going to the Y of the back button, basically. You have X, Y coordinates on your screens, and you're going to go from top to bottom, left to right. And so it's determining what the point is of that Y coordinates here to determine where it's at. It goes right to that location. You'll notice how much more space is down here. If I kept adding more contacts, by the way, I'll show you what happens, because I only have that as 200 height, I believe, something like that. So it's not real high. Not real high. You'll see how I cut it off down here, but it's actually in the scroll view, so you can scroll it. Okay. You'll also notice I can't go up any higher. I can try. I'm trying, and then not until I click that back button does it let me go to the top. Okay, we'll see how that works and how that functions. This is a real common trick in mobile development, to utilize one screen in multiple different ways, right, without having to create a new page. which a lot of times you'll see it in gaming applications and where you have a lot of interface to cover. Minecraft to be an example. Minecraft does a lot of X, Y coordinates. It might take up a real estate of, say, I don't know, 30,000 pixels, but the screen only holds 300. So it's literally, as you're moving, it's going to a different location on the map, but it's viewing a 30,000 pixel environment, if that makes sense, both X and Y. So you'll learn how that, you won't learn, gaming development tonight, but you'll learn the concepts of how you can manipulate that environment with a float, and not only float, but also a scroll view. So jumping right into it. We've already talked a little bit about keyboard hiding, which we're going to do tonight. We're just going to hide three text fields, hide the keyboard when you enter and go away. We've already ran the final example of what it should look like. You'll go through tonight, and I'll walk it through you step by step how it works. Let me just show you real quick. If you click on number 3, where it says week 6 start file, that's going to be the one that I'm going to have you fork to your environment, just so you'll have it. So go ahead and log into your GitHub and go ahead and fork it. As soon as you log in, all you do, remember, is hit the fork icon, and it'll fork it to your GitHub repo, your GitHub account, actually. So it'll take it from iOS back to whatever account you chose for it to be in. Once you fork it over, again, this is the start one. I'm going to have you fork another one besides that one. Once you fork that one, which should take just a second or two, I want you to click on iOS course again in GitHub, where my mouse is hovering over. Click on iOS course and click on the top one, which is week 6 hide keyboard. That's the final one that you saw tonight that I just showed. Go ahead and fork that one as well. So you'll have both the start and final. Start starts with the word start. Final does not, but it's the final one, completed one. So you'll have the start and finish from both. So when you're finished in your environment, you should have week 6 hide keyboard under your username in GitHub and week 6 hide keyboard start, both of those. Okay. I got that. Okay. Next, what I want you to do is go ahead and click on, it doesn't matter which one you click on, really. I'm going to click on the week 6 hide keyboard and go down to the, bless you, go down to the week 6 hide keyboard folder and viewcontroller.swift. So in here, and it's on your handout a little different, by the way. If you look at the handout that has the words on it, the code, if you look at that with me real quick, notice right below the import UI kit, here you go, there's a handout for you. Right below the import UI kit, there's number 0, where it says modify the class view controller. That's what you're doing here on 0. You're adding a UI scroll view delegate and a UI text view delegate is what we'll do tonight. So if you want, you can keep the handout in front of you, the type of words, and this in front of you. That way, if you want to go back and if you get all screwed up on your code, you literally could view this screen, and I recommend viewing it in raw mode. And you could, if you named everything correctly, when you're naming your variables and you're bringing your outlets and actions in, you should be able to just drag and drop that code into your view controller. All right, so you can keep both environments up if you want to. Okay, so let's do this. I have the code in front of me right now, and what I'd like to do is, before you get started, is quickly go over the app. Oh, great! My Xcode. Is you guys' Xcode being updated? Mine's being updated. Hopefully, if that happens, we're not going to be able to do anything. Is yours being updated or is it just me? Okay. Okay, hang on just a second. Let me see if I can kill this and restart it. If you get prompted to update, which I don't think I clicked anything, but I might have on accident, don't click update. It's weird. It's not even showing it in the killing. But if you ever need to kill anything on a Mac, by the way, if you click anywhere on the desktop and go up here to the Apple icon and go to force quit, you can quit stuff. Okay, it looks like I've already quit mine. Oh, great. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go over in the code. How's that? All right, so let's just go over it this way on your handout, with your handout in front of you. I'll quickly go over this. It won't take 10 minutes to go over it, but I think it's important to do it. Okay, so first handout I want to go over is the one with the picture on front. This says Hi Keyboard. This is the Word document, by the way. The Word document and the code both, the Word document and the PDF, both of this is found in the root of the GitHub that you forked over, both the start one and the finished one. The code, this one I printed out here, I just copy and pasted it into Word to make it look a little nicer, but it's also found in the repo as well. In fact, let me show you real quick. It's the code for steps.txt, this one here. It's all it is a copy of the view controller, is all it is. And then the PDF and the docx, that's a Word document PDF. They're both the exact same. If you wanted to download that one and make some edits or something. In this room, Word is like super, super slow. So I recommend doing PDFs in here. If you want to download it at home and make some edits or whatever, you can definitely do that. Because it's your repo and you can do what you want to with it. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, definitely avail yourself to that. So let me bring back my viewcontroller.swift. While you're looking at the handout here, actually, let me bring up that one right there. There we go. The PDF. All right, so what we're going to do tonight, and we'll run through it quickly, then I'll just let you go for it. You've already done this a couple times, so it's hopefully getting clear for you as far as how to create an app and what to do step by step. But I feel like the best way that I learn and a lot of programmers learn is by doing it, just not watching me do it, right? Just actually doing it. You're going to mess up and stuff's not going to work. That's going to happen, but that's great. That should work. That should happen. But just I encourage you, don't give up and just keep, it's easier when you're learning or when you're creating, doing something by project like this, especially if you have everything in front of you, is if you mess up and you can't really figure it out and you spend a few minutes trying to figure it out, it's actually easier sometimes to start all over again. Then 3 hours later, you've literally not went anywhere. Does that make sense? So it's easier to just start over again sometimes. So we're going to create a single view app. Don't do it yet. We're just going to kind of walk it through on the screen here, and then I'll have you do it. I'll go over the step-by-step, the code, and then I'll get you started on the screen just because it's a little tricky on getting the view controller wrapped around or the scroll view wrapped around your objects. That's a little tricky. I'll show you how to do that, but once you get that, you should be okay. Everything else is straightforward. So we're creating a single view app, which I think I told you week 1. That's what I normally create apps. That way I can do whatever I want to with it. iPhone only, because we don't really need it in the iPad environment. We're just doing iPhone only. We're going to make it, once we finally create it, a portrait only, and make sure it's iPhone. You'll have to uncheck the landscape left and right by default. Number 3, we'll add in a label at the top called My Contacts. If you wanted to add a title bar, you could, or navigation title bar, you could, but we'll just add My Contacts just for fun. And then once you add that, put My Contacts in there, center it manually, and then you're going to add 3 UI text fields. The first field, make sure it's 195 width. And let me just, I'm not going to show you, but when you select a field in Xcode that you added, on the right side, you remember the properties, you can go over to what looks like a ruler, the size properties, you click on it, and just make it 195 width. And then manually, the easiest way to do it, I always do it in Xcode anyway, is when I put an object in here, I'll click away over here with my mouse, and then click back to center it. Just seems to work better. Once you get that first one done, then you can do a Command D. Command D will duplicate anything in Xcode. So it'll just duplicate what you just did on the first one. And then you just click on the second one, drag it under this first one until it snaps. You'll see it snap both vertically and horizontally with the blue lines. And you'll literally feel it snap like right underneath this one. So when you click and drag it, it'll snap under here and this way both, if that makes sense. Then Command D this one there. Now these are actually, instead of in the title view or text view, I'm having to do what's called placeholder property, which again is helpful in real estate. And why do you think that is? To use placeholder versus a label. Why do you think that's important? To use placeholder. And this is what a placeholder looks like, by the way. Labels will maybe be here or above it or whatever. So what's important about using a placeholder versus a label, you think? Or why should we do it? No wrong answer, by the way. Why do you think we should do it? Do what? Anybody? What now? No. No. Well, let's think about real estate for a second. Why do we want to do a placeholder versus a label instead of a placeholder? Somebody might have said it already.
Save space.
What?
Save space.
It saves space, exactly. Because we only have much real estate, right? Especially on an iPhone app to deal with. And so placeholder actually was not originally in the first version of Xcode with Objective-C. You had to write some hairy code behind every object to do a placeholder, which is crazy. But they did bring that pretty quickly in, and now it's pretty common. You see these in a lot of apps now. You see no labels, right? Just your placeholder. It's a light gray toward the user knows what's supposed to be in there. So a placeholder is just first name, last name, email. Then make sure the text property is empty, by the way. You don't want anything in there by default manually. You just want a placeholder, which is behind it. Then what you can do underneath that is place two buttons. The one on the left is the view contacts button. The one on the right is a save button. All right. And what I tell you on this one is basically on the first button is type in what you need, which is view contacts. It'll automatically make it as wide as it needs to be. And then just click on it and drag it like this one, like shove it right underneath email, and it'll snap underneath there just like the text box did. Same thing with what I generally do on this one is I'll just do a Command D on this object, rename it to save, drag it over, and make sure it's even with the UI, the context button. And again, if you click and drag it here in Xcode, it'll lock in for you. Then here's something tricky. It's not real tricky, but it's something different. You've not done it before. So what you got to do now is before we can add it to a scroll view, you've got to click all the objects, and you can do it one or two ways. You can click and drag with the mouse, like I show here, or you can control click it on each one of the objects, or command click it, I'm sorry, on each one of the objects, and then do it that way. For this environment, because it's all together, just a click drag usually works pretty easy, but again, command click if you have something in there you didn't want to select. But what's going to happen is once you select these objects here and you're not selecting the label, is you're going to go up to the top of Xcode and do an editor, embed, and scroll view. And what it's going to do is put this nice little scroll view you see up here on the overhead to the back of those objects. It's literally in the back now of the three text views and the text fields and the two buttons. Well, it's not going to be wide enough, as you can see by default, or long enough, because we want it to surpass the phone at the bottom, but we want it to be pretty much the width of the phone, but not exactly the width of the phone. We take about 95% of it. So roughly about 343 for an iPhone 8 is about what I want. And then 1120 brings it way beyond, about double, about what, about like this on an iPhone. So iPhone screen here, like that type of thing. So it brings that scroll view all the way down to the bottom, right? Then what you'll need to do is it'll be wonky a little bit. It'll actually be off to the right a little bit when you put it on there the first time. When you make the width and height, it'll be like over here. And again, click away a white space or something, Then click and drag it over. And then once you've done that, you'll center these objects, which will be off as well. Again, you can do a command click on the, you can't do a click drag, by the way. Once it's in a scroll viewer, you can't, it's a little weirder to manipulate. You can still do it though by just doing a command click on these 5 objects, basically. That's what you have you do next. On E is center those objects inside the view, and then go to the very bottom on number 10 of the view and add in a text view and a button. The width of the text view is very narrow, and the height's only 200. You could make it higher than 200 if you want to. I just made this one 200. Really doesn't matter what the height is. You just don't want to be too high. I'd say max would be like 300 maybe, because it's going to put a nice scroll in there anyway. So it'll end up looking like this at the bottom. Now to get it at the bottom, it's a little tricky. Again, all you have to do is click away and then click on the scroll view and drag up until you see it hit the bottom of the simulator, basically, in the view controller. You've already done this, but you're creating a lot of actions and outlets and actions this week. The back button at the bottom, which you're already there right now, by the way, when we get to that place, you're already at the bottom. So I have you, this is the first action outlet I have you create. And one of the reasons, well, the reason I have you create an action and an outlet both from the back button is this. It needs an action to go back to the top right, but it needs an outlet so when that view button at the very top can use the Y coordinator or the Y location, it has to be an outlet in order to do that. It won't let you even view or read the button if it's not an outlet. If that makes sense. So it has to be both. And you'll notice it's the same name. I have you create an outlet and action both, like on the screen here. Outlet, action, both. Same exact name. Not going to conflict anything. The UI text view, TXT view, create an outlet from that. So once you're through creating those 3 outlets, it'll end up looking like this. In fact, this one, it should be TXT view. This is an older example instead of TXT contacts. TXT view is what yours will look like. Then you'll go to the very top of the scroll view again to where you're seeing the original, 3 text boxes, 2 buttons. And here's where you'll create all the outlets and actions for those. Scroll view first, then first, TXT last, TXT email, then the button, BTN save, BTN view. So it'll end up looking like that. Okay. Then you got your code. The code on the second handout, or you can use the code on GitHub, whichever one you want to use. I'll go to the one on GitHub so you can see it. And I just suggest going to the week 6 hide keyboard you guys forked. And the only thing that won't be on this one will be the 0 one that you have on your handout, which you do have to add in the scroll view delegate and the UI text view delegate. If you don't add those 2 in, it'll still function. It just, when you click on each text box, it won't go to the top of your screen, if that makes sense. Okay, it'll still function. You just won't see the text go to the very top or the scroll view go to the very top. So just like we've done that, these will already be in your code, by the way. And when I create my apps, by the way, this is how I usually do it. And I had this in the podcast so I put together for you. Regardless of where the outlets are on my code in my view, I always bring all my outlets together into one at the very top, and I label them outlets. That's pretty simple, right? And then below that, I always put all my actions together. So all my buttons. That way I know they're all there in one little area. Okay. So now that's not always going to happen as you're creating stuff. When you get it all done and it's working, then I go in and organize the code to where people that look at it afterwards make it easier to read. Just like tonight before we came, I made sure and reorganize things a little bit more to make it easier for you guys to understand. So outlets, then actions. So the first one you're doing is the 0 one there on line 10, 11, or actually 11. You're adding the UI scroll view delegate and UI text view delegate. That's so you can use the scroll view option to go up to the top when you're on each one of the text fields that I'll show you in a second. Number 1, you're modifying the back button. It'll already be in there, by the way. And this is kind of when you're copying, pasting code or typing code in, here's one thing that will help you. If you put your cursor on the end of any function, it'll show you the beginning of that function in Xcode, okay? I try to make it to where when I have you add code, I put a comment above each section. So this first one is, you'll be setting the scroll point and going to 0 location, which is at the top of the view. Scroll view.set content offset 0, animated true. So you literally see it scroll up animated wise to the top. Then this text first become first responder basically just has the app go to that first text box and blink a cursor is all it's doing. Going on, I'm going to try to put these in order so it's easier for you. Number 2 action you'll be modifying is the save button. Here you'll be putting in some validation and allowing the function to go to the bottom and save. So the first thing you'll be doing is dismissing any keyboard that's open with the dismiss keyboard function. Next is validation. If any of the 3 text boxes at the top are empty, it pops up a message that says all fields are required, please correct. But you can put whatever you wanted to in that message. Once that message box is, you have that working and you know how it works, you can use it in every single app. That message box function that you'll see in a second. So let's say it's true on this one that yes, every, or it's false, every one of these are populated with something, first name, last name, email. So it's going to go to the else path. Here, it's going to determine, okay, first time running, that bottom text view is going to be empty, right? So if it is empty, what it's going to do is add to the very top of that text field or text view the word my contacts and a new line. And here's the new line function, by the way. My contacts space \n is new line. Then I do some formatting or concatenating the text together in line 61, which is text view.text equals, and then we learned this in week 1 with Swift, how to bring in your variables into a string. So that's all that's doing. You will notice there's some -ns, which means new line. So it's going to bring in the text view.text, which the first time around is going to be my contacts, then new line Chuck, new line Conkle, new line cconkle@gmail, right? These next 3 lines does what you think? Clears it out, right? Clears out the text box at the top. Then I declare a CG point. And this is not real difficult, but try to wrap your head around it, and I'll spend some time on it. Basically, all we're doing is declaring a variable called scroll point, and it's a CG point, okay? A CG point has to have 1, 2 numeric values for an X and Y coordinates, okay? And so X0, and you'll notice this is actually in the, this was in the save button. So it's going to be 0x, Y coordinates is going to be X is from the, oh, it'll be easier. And so basically we're going over here. X is going to be 0, and then Y is wherever the button's at, location-wise, from top down. Okay. And so we'll say, I don't know, for argument's sake, we'll say it's 600 or whatever is the Y. So it's going to go to 0Y in the screen and set that scroll point, and it's going to actually set it to the scroll point variable. In this case, it's going to be 0, 600. So go down over 0, and then down 600, or over 600 down, and then basically over like that. And so it's going to be 600 down, over 1, over 0 for the location. Then the view button at the bottom, the one at the it's at the top, I'm sorry, at the top of the app, to get to the bottom of the view to see all the contacts, its function basically dismisses keyboard again, sets a scroll point. Notice here, same exact as it was for save because we're going to the same location. 0x, Y, wherever it's at down the screen, where it's going to go, and then it's going to set that scroll point to that location and go there. And what it means here, by the way, on scroll point animated true, if you do false, it just goes there real choppy. If you do true, it actually floats there real nice, and hopefully, depending on your app how it's running or your device how it's running, pretty smooth. The only thing that would cause it choppiness is if you have some memory issues or something like that. This next one is a message box function. And again, you're getting a lot of functions this week that you can use over and over again. This is one of the first ones, which is just a plain function that you can use as a message box in your app anywhere. Okay, so it's using an alert view. And by the way, when you use alert view, Xcode Swift will tell you it's outdated, and to use another one, it still works. It's going to work for a number of years to come, so you can still use it. Basically, all it's doing, you have to control the alert title, the message, and then you can even put whatever kind of button you want in there. In this case, I just put an OK button.
What number line?
Do it now. This is line 100 through 110. 100 through 110. And then the add touches begins now. Now, the reason I glommed all these together was these next few sections of comments you can use in every single app where you have any touch enabled. Okay, you're going to change a few variables, but the functions are all the same in every single app where you have to use a high keyboard. So the first function, number 5, is the touches begin function. It catches a screen tap and resigns keyboard is what its job is. So it's literally, you will have to copy this or type this in. And basically what it does is, all it does is forces resign a keyboard if it's viewable to hide on any 3 objects on the screen, which currently is text first, text last, and text email. The next one is the dismiss keyboard. This one, all it does is the same exact thing. And by the way, this one is called the dismiss keyboard. You'll see in a second when the form loads to add it to the tap gesture. So anytime you hit a UI scroll view anywhere in the app, it's going to go to this function and close the keyboard. Next, the text field should return. This is a function that's called when the return key is pressed on the app, which users do a lot of times, right? They hit the enter key or the return key on the keyboard, virtual keyboard, and it's going to close it as well. It's going to resign whatever text they're currently on and close it. So let's say you create a really simple app, right? You don't have a scroll view on it, but you just want to resign the keyboard whenever people hit enter key. This could be used in your app. You just need to make sure to include, anytime you do that, you need to include the UI text field delegate anytime you do that. Okay. Going on down, the text field should return one over that. Number 8, the did begin editing. This is whenever you tap your finger in a text field of any type. Notice what happens. A little different on this one. It doesn't just resign a keyboard. In fact, it doesn't resign a keyboard. Its whole job here is to set the scroll point to the exact location of where that object is on the screen and put it at the very top. So in this case, setting the CG point 0, which is the very top, and the location of Y, that object, and then it's going to set that scroll point to 0 and animate to the top. So it's going to force that control or that text field at the time go to the very top, regardless from the first one, the second one, or the third one. It's always going to go to the 0 location every time. Remember 0, X, top down, Y, left to right. Next is the text field did end editing. So say that they are finished editing, they're away from it. It's going to set the scroll point back to the way it was, which was 0, animated. That's it. So as the app ran initially, that's where it's going to go. So if you tap away on the away from the field, it's going to go back to the normal view. Number 10 is the text view begin editing. The text view in Xcode and Swift does not work so hot as far as the scroll views go. It doesn't play nice with scroll view. So, but what does work in this app is the 3 text fields. Text view, not so much. I have it in there in the code, and it does animate when you. But this whole object here is not meant to write in anyway. The text view at the bottom is just meant to show stuff, so it doesn't really need to be animated. Whereas the top 3 text fields are animated because users do enter their enter text in there. Number 11, the text view did end editing. Same. This functions for the text view. So 11, 10, and are for text views. 9, 8, 7 text fields. Okay. Those can be used in every single app where you use either a text field or a text view. Now, if you include text field and text view in every one of your apps and you don't use them yet, it's not going to hurt anything because these are generic. These are all generic calls, except for when you're calling actual objects to be resigned. What you'll notice in starting with number 7, except for the scroll view, everything is basically generic, is used generically and on purpose. That way it can be used in a lot of different apps. So let's go to the view did load. Remember, the view did load is what's loaded upon whenever an app is ran. And so this is the only view of the whole app. So it's going to go here first. So first thing it's going to do here is declare a tap gesture. And here is where it calls that dismiss view controller function that we looked at earlier. So it's basically assigning it to self, which is it has to do for the delegate. Then it's going to the dismiss keyboard and saying, okay, every time this tap gesture is called, it's going to go to that dismiss keyboard function, which hides the keyboard on any object that might be tapped on. The scroll view.add gesture recognizer adds that tap gesture now to the scroll view. The next one, 188, determines the screen size of the device, UI screen.main.bound. And it's a CG rect, rectangular. The next comment says go to the left, 0 pixels, 50 from the top, width and device height, and height of device in pixels. Now, the reason I do 50 from the top is because of the label. Remember the label I had you put at the top called My Contacts? It's roughly about 50 pixels down. So I have it by default going 50 pixels from the top and setting that scroll view in that location. And what it's going to do is shove that. It's going to shove that scroll view right underneath the view, the label at the very top. Then it's going to set the focus to the text first. Then the last function in there before we get started is the did receive memory warning, which is a default function. In fact, the 2 default functions when we create this in a second is view did load and did receive warning. All right. All right, cool. Looks like I can do something on my Xcode now. Great. All right, cool. So everybody ready? So let's go to the File, New in Xcode and go to Project. And we're going to be using the handout I gave you, the nice one that says hide keyboard. If you didn't get that, come up and get it because you'll need it. Make sure and select Single View App. And just like it says on the handout, we're going to call this one Hide Keyboard. All right. Yep, hide keyboard. My eyes are about shot today. All right, hide keyboard. Leave everything the same except for the includes. Let's uncheck the includes at the bottom as always. Leave everything else good. We're fine there. And then click Next. And again, handouts are up here if you did not get the handouts. On the left side, double click on Desktop and click Create. And everything you were getting ready to do, by the way, is in that podcast, that second podcast I went over earlier. All right, cool. Now we're going to uncheck Automatic Manage Signing. We don't want that. We want to uncheck going down to Deployment Info, Landscape Left, Landscape Right. And we want to check Devices Universal to iPhone. So again, starting at the top, uncheck Automatic Manage Signing. Then I went down and changed the devices to iPhone only and unchecked Landscape Left, Landscape Right. You should only have a device orientation portrait. I got that? Cool. Next, click on the main.storyboard on the left side. And we are now on number 3. You're going to add in a UI label. And I'll do this with you through the adding of all the objects and the scroll viewer. That's the hard part. Everything else I'll let you go at. And if you want to go ahead, you can, but I'm going to kind of go a little slow, hopefully, or slower than I normally go, hopefully, so you can get it. So once this loads on the main storyboard, we're going to add a UI label at the top, right underneath the bar there, the 941 on mine. So over here in your object class, let's grab a UI label. Going to be just a few down from the top there. There it is. Grab that label and bring it up to the middle. Don't worry about being exact yet, because we're going to, as soon as we throw it in there, in the middle, we're going to go over here to the property inspector and rename label to my contacts. Then click away, remember, and then click back and drag it and center it like mine. So again, we just add a label. I had you do the text version, my contacts. Click away in the white space, and then center it to where the guides show up like mine on the overhead. You got your vertical guide, you got your horizontal guide. That just means it's centered vertically or centered horizontally, and I want it centered right there at the top as far as it can go. Cool. I got that? All right, next. We're going to add 3 UI text fields right below that. So here's the best, and there's going to be a width of 195. So let's find the text field, which is a few below the label there, 3 below the label. Just click and drag the text field under my contacts. Just let it go. Don't worry about placement yet. As soon as you drag it and let it go, go to the little ruler icon, which is the size inspector here. Click on that, and mine's 97, which yours will probably be by default. We want it to be 195. Type in 195 on width and hit the enter key. Click away on your view, like over here in the white space anywhere, and then click back on that, and now center it just like mine, to where that center view or that center ruler shows up, the center guide. Release it. What's the duplicate command? Remember? Command D, so let's do a Command D twice. We're going to take both those text fields that were just created and put them right on top of each other. And you'll feel them snap. So if you look on mine, when I snap it up here at the top, it snaps right below the first one, this third one right below the second one. Then I need you to, once you've done that, under 4E, put the placeholders just like I have you in 4E, first name, last name, email. From top, the first one, second one, third one. Placeholders found, by the way, in the attribute inspector. And make sure it's in placeholder and not the text view. Placeholder property. First name. Last name. And email. Okay, that completes number 4. Number 5, we're going to add 2 buttons. One for the left is going to be for the view contacts. The one on the right is going to be to save. So let's bring a button in then, which is right below label. And I'm not worried about placement yet. You see, I'm going to put it roughly right there. And then going over here to the button title, and I'm going to put in that View Contacts. View Contacts, like I have on top of page number 3. View Contacts. The width should be already created for us. And all I do is click away. If you look on the overhead, I'll click away anywhere in the white space. Go back to that button. And now I want it just like this. It's centered and it's lined up with first name, last name, email. And it's literally right below and snaps in right there. I'm going to duplicate that with a Command D. Bring it kind of over here for now because it's a little too wide. And I'm going to rename it to Save. S-A-V-E. Click away. Bring it back up here, and this is where this button goes. So you'll notice it lines up with the View Contacts button. It lines up to the right of first name, last name, email, and that's exactly where I want it. Doing good. Next, that is 5, A and B both. We did that. 6, select all except the top label. Again, you can do it this way, just by taking your mouse and selecting it. Or if you press and hold the Command key, you can click each object, however you want to do it. I'm going to select all mine with my mouse. Just don't select my contact, which is a label. You don't want that included in the scroll view. I got that. Now we're ready to go up to the editor menu and go down to embed in scroll view. I'll leave it up there for a second. Embed in scroll view. As soon as you click on scroll view, it's going to put the objects in front of the scroll view and the scroll view in the background. Want to do that? Okay. Next, we're going to take the width of that scroll view and change it to 343 and the height to 1120 by clicking on the size inspector, going down to the width, and I want it to be at the bottom of page 3, 343, and height 1120. It'll be off. We'll fix it here. Remember, for me to click on this, the easiest way is to click away. I could literally click where my mouse is right now. Click away and then come back and click and drag and center that right there. Perfect. Right there. There you go. Now I'm going to do the command and hold it. Command click. And it's a little tricky sometimes. You have to click away, come back. You'll have to do it. Click away, come back, and click the save button like the first time. Just don't do the command. Just hit save. Click the save. And then command click the other objects. Okay, so again, click away, click on any object. I click the save button first. Then command click the view button and then the other 3 objects. We want to click and hold and release the command key. Then click and hold and drag any of those objects and center it roughly like right there. That's perfect. Again, the way to do it inside of the scroll view is a little tricky. You have to click the first object first and select it. Then command click the other objects that you want to select. Release your command button. Then hover over any of the objects that are selected to move those objects around. And I want it at the very top and centered like that. Cool? All right, everybody got that? Next, we're on page number 4. We did the drag and center on that, on E9. We need to go to the bottom now of the scroll view. So this one's a little tricky, but not too bad. Here's what I suggest doing. If you look on the scroll view here on the right of your Xcode environment, see how you can do this? Bring it to where it's like about like that. And then click here where my mouse is, and then come over here in front of the, you don't want to do it over here, you want to do it down here, like right around here. Click and hold it and drag up to where it goes to the very bottom, where you can see the very bottom anyway, and then release it. So now that's the very bottom of my scroll view there at the very bottom. And the top should be way out of the picture on purpose. So it should look kind of like that, like mine is, all right? So once you've done that, we're now ready to add in a button and the UI text view at the bottom. I want the UI text view to be 216 width and 200 height. So it's towards the bottom of your controls, the text view is. It's around the middle, actually, I think, roughly. So there it is. It's right above scroll view is the text view. I'm going to click and drag that into this environment here. And I'm going to go to the ruler, and I'm going to make it 216 width, 200 height. Click away, come back, and bring it kind of roughly like right there is fine. Doesn't have to be right at the very bottom. I'm going to put a little space there on mine. I'm not going to shove it at the very bottom. And the one thing I want to do here, by the way, while I'm in here, and I have this on your handout, but I'm going to clear the text. So I need to go here to the inspector, the attribute inspector. See all this text in here, this dummy text? I want to select all that text and get rid of it. And then click away, and you'll see it'll still stay there. You don't want to delete it, though, inside of that where my mouse is. You don't want to delete it there. You always want to delete it over here. If you delete it here, sometimes you'll delete the whole object on mistake. Okay? So we've added the UI text view. Now we're going to add a button above that to the left. Let's do that. Above it to the left, just like in number 10 has you do it. Move it around where it looks kind of like number 10 there. And I want to name this one back in the text property. And I will need to reposition it once I put back in there. Just click it, and there you go. Perfect. That's how you want your back button, just like that. And so I have my bottom one centered, rough, not all the way to the bottom. Then my back button, left justified, and right above the UI text view. Cool? Very good? Okay, now we are ready to create our very first outlets and actions. And once I get started here, I'll let you keep going on your own, because this was the trickiest part here. So once I create these two and drag up to the top and create the rest of them, outlet actions, you're on your own. All right, so here we go. Everybody click on the Olympic symbol, assistant editor here. And we want to put some space up here. So I'm going to put my cursor here in line 12 of my code and just hit some space in here. I want some space for all my outlets and actions. And also, too, you click on this icon here, we'll hide the outline, document outline, so we can see our stuff on our screen. Okay, cool. Now what we're going to do is, first of all, according to your handout, I'm having you create the back button outlet first, outlet and action called BTN back with the caps B in back. So click and drag, control click drag, and BTN back is the first one, which is an outlet. And make sure and select UI button if it should already be selected for you. Click connect. Then control click drag again underneath that one. This time it's going to be action, very same name. And make sure and select the type to be UI button. Make sure it's not any, but UI button. And then click connect. And while we're up here, I'm going to go ahead and put on line 12. Yours might be a different line number, but I'm going to go ahead and put up here outlets. And then on line 15, we'll get a few more spaces here. I'm going to put actions right above that back button. That's our very first outlets and actions we've created. We'll kind of get things started. Okay. Flip the page on number 5. Now we need to go back to the very top of our code with the scroll view. So before we do that, let's do this. Click on the Show Standard Editor where my mouse is pointed to on the overhead to give us more real estate here. Then click away. Take your scroll and kind of reposition things so where you can see things a little bit better. And then come over here, and you might have to do it a couple times. Click and drag down where it's back to where it was. Perfect. Just like that. And if you have to click away and come over a couple times, that's fine. That's normal to do that. Okay, now we've got that. I'm going to walk you through on the top of page 5, the outlets and actions through number 14 or 13, and look at number 14 and make sure it looks like mine kind of, and then you're ready for your code. So first action I have you create on number 13 is the scroll view. So let's click on the Olympic symbol, go to scroll view, and we're going to put, this is an outlet, so we're going to put it right underneath the BTN back. And this is the one I'm highlighting now, that is a scroll view. Okay, remember? And make sure don't mistake it with any other object. It's this one here. And you'll notice when I click on an object and try to do scroll view again, it won't let me. So click away and then come back. then you can select it. It's just finicky like that. So control click drag underneath button, BTN back, and we're going to call it scroll view with the caps S and V on 13A on your handout. Spell it just like on the handout, 13A. Syntax and everything. If we don't put the right syntax in that code we use later, it's going to mess up. Not saying you couldn't correct it, but a little easier for you. Click connect. Then we're going to do the rest of them in line. We're going to do first, last, email, save, then view button. The first, last email is going to be outlets, and the save button and the view button's out action. So I'm going to go into text first, right underneath the existing one, which is my scroll view, and TXT, FIRST. And last, TXT, LAST. And finally, email on the outlets. Then I've got my two buttons, which I'm going to put those under my action comment. I'm going to put it actually under my back. We'll start with the right here on line 24 on my code. Yours might be a different line, but I'm putting it right after my right bracket and BTN back. I'm going to put the BTN save first. So control click drag right there. BTN save, and make sure and change it to action and the type to UI button. And the same with the view control. Right, BTN view, the caps V. And change it to action, type UI button, and connect. So hopefully yours should look like mine on number 14, except for you will have, instead of TXT contacts, I changed the directions a little bit. You'll have TXT view for your outlets. So you should have BTN scroll view. Oh, did I not create the? I thought we created that. BTN scroll view, first, last. Oh, I thought we created the outlets for that. Maybe not. Guess I didn't create that. Here's a little trick, by the way. Evidently, you guys might have done it. I didn't. I didn't create the action and outlet for the view and the button at the bottom. Instead of scrolling all the way down the bottom, by the way you can do it is you can bring the outline back up, like I've just done. And when I click the outline back up, you'll notice I have access to all the objects on the scroll view. So here's my scroll view and all the objects, right? Well, I want to create the TXT. Let me go back and make sure I'm naming it right. It's back on page 4. TXT view and BTN back. So let me put my TXT view there. Oh, I talked about it. I guess I just didn't do it. And then click connect. And then my BTN back. Maybe I did put that in. Okay, I did put that in. My TXT view I didn't have in there. Okay. So I have my back, my save, and my view. I got that. All right, cool. So I missed one. So just a little trick, if you miss something, or if you want to, you can do your binding this way as well with the outline view, which I think it's a little easier once you start using it this way, because you have a lot of objects on there. So now that you have all your binding there, and you're now ready on number 15 to go through the steps, and you'll need to use the second handout to help you on that. Or you can also use the code here. Just remember, starting on line 11, you need to add in the UI scroll view and UI text field delegate. And for time's sake, if you just want to copy and paste, that's fine. You don't have to type in the code. Just make sure and this is beneficial. Make sure when you're moving your code from this environment to the actual Xcode environment, you're putting it in the right location. And I suggest doing it line by line, comment by comment, and just confirm that it looks good before you go on to the next portion. Make sense? And as you get adding code, by the way, as you go down here, if you see any warnings or errors, disregard to get through all the steps in the code. So if you want to use your handout and type it manually, or you want to copy and paste it like I'm going to do from the GitHub repo, however you want to do it, it's up to you. No wrong way, as long as we get them in there and correctly, that's the main thing. So again, first thing you're going to do on line 11 is add in your delegates, which I think on your handout is 0, but on this code here, it's not on the overhead anyway. And probably helpful to go to the this view here that my mouse is on versus the delegate or the assistant editor. You want to go to the standard editor. I'm going to hide my outline, and I'm going to go right to the code of view controller. And now I can start adding in like you're doing delegates. Boom, that's my first one. And just go back and forth. You can do a command tab on your keyboard if you're going back and forth. You should have all of your outlets created. Actions, number 1 is my BTM back. I'm going to put in the code here for that. And don't worry about warnings or errors yet until you have everything added. Make sure you're putting your code in between the left and right brackets of existing functions. And there will be new functions that don't exist, by the way. You'll add all complete functions. If you're copying from the web, it's easier to go view on the raw mode. You can get some weird characters if you don't. What I mean by that, if you look on the overhead, if you're in GitHub, if you click on the raw button, it's better to copy it in this view than it is with seeing the numbers. Sometimes you'll get some gobbledygook on the other one. Comments 4 through 11 do not exist in your code yet at all. Comments 4 through 11 are code sections 4 through 11. So you can literally copy all of that from number 4 comment all the way down to the bottom of 11. It's not included in your app at all yet. It's all brand new. To save you time. So 4 through 11, you can copy everything 4 through 11, like I've done on mine. Bring it in. And then view did load should be the last one you have left. And you will need to, once your code is correct, you will need to go in and follow the directions back on the first document, which I think we have left to do, which is centering. Let me see here. Oh, we have left to do is the referencing of the fields. You got to add a delegate to all the text fields, which I'll do that with you here in about 5 minutes. I'll do the text view delegates with you. And then we have to center the code like we've done already before, which is the suggested constraints. I'll do that.
instruction.
Do what now?
You have another thing for the instruction. You don't want to, it was an update, so it didn't open up for me.
There you go. Get warnings like mine, what you will, on yours when you can pilot the first time. Don't worry about it. Manually updating things on our own. So. Uncheck the bottom too. Just like some of you. Well, it's probably updated on mine. I'm good. No, you're fine. You're good. Yeah. Podcast is out there, so you're fine. On exactly what we did. Yeah, you're fine. You're good. And your take-home assignment basically is tonight for your in class. All I want you to do is submit that you started the project, know how it works. Your take-home basically is building upon the in class. You're gonna have more fields for the take-home. So I know mine's still rendering here, so I'll bring up the URL, submitting the URL for the in class. I'll tell you what, to make it. So I had you guys start from scratch tonight on that. So I'm going to change the submission for the in class. I'm just going to be putting there. So submit the URL because you're creating yours from scratch here. Because if you want, you can use what you're working on tonight as a foundation for your take-home project. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you submit. So I had you do the fork and clone. I did not have you do I had you fork. I did not have you do a clone. We are doing the all directions. I'm having to do that. And then all I'm going to have you do is, here, let's do this. We submit the word started. That's what I would do. Yeah, that'll work. That way you can just use one GitHub repo for this week. No sense in wasting two Git repos. You can use the same repo for this one. once you're finished tonight. And when you're finished with your code tonight, again, for practice, it'd probably be smart to create a brand new repo in your GitHub, upload all your code wherever it's at, whatever shape it's in, then you can continue working on it. Okay, so does that make sense? Create a new repo, upload your code as it is. Make sure before you upload your code that Xcode is shut down. Mine is just now starting up. Moment of truth, drum roll. Only created like 50 times today, so it should work. And I do recommend doing this over and over again, like you do each week, starting out like we did in class, where you're creating modules, code, copying code, to where you're actually going step by step in the directions, using a podcast, which should help you. After this gets through compiling mine, I'm going to show you how to add delegates to your text views, because I know you're still moving code, some of you, which is going to be number 16, where you're adding delegates to the 3 text fields at the top. Let me show you how that is. So if you want to do it with me, you can, or I'll just add it to the video here. So you want to click on main. Get out of your code view and click on main.storyboard. And you want to make sure and click on that view controller. Make sure that's selected. Then you'll go over to the very right option, which is the connection inspector. Connection inspector. And mine's already been added, but basically it's right here where it says referencing outlets, that little radio button that's empty right now. You'll click and drag it 3 times, first one, second one, third one. If you click and drag it, release on the first name, select delegate, which is the very top one, and you'll do that on all 3. I'll do it with you here. I'll show you. So I'll get rid of these to show you how I did it. It's on your handout, but it's easier to watch it, I think. So I'm going to you don't do a control or command click. You just literally make sure view selected, view control selected, and it's the referencing outlets, this radio button here. Click it, drag, release it. You have 4 options. You want to select the top one, which is delegate. And you'll do that for each one of the text fields. If you don't do that, you're not going to be able to, it won't fire when you leave the text field to hide keyboard if you don't do that. Okay? And then once you have that done, then your code's all in there. You should then be able to fire it up, go through the simulation like we did in first of class. And if something doesn't work, more than likely you rename something differently on your view when you did your outlets and actions, differently than what was in the handout. That can occur. You could change a name in the code to match what you declared it as an outlets and action if you want to. Make it quicker. Definitely make sure though, and I would suggest whether it's creating a GitHub and uploading this or saving it on a thumb drive or zipping it and sending it to yourself, however you want to do it. That way you don't lose the work you've worked on tonight. But as soon as you can, I would add it as a repo, and you're going to use what you've done in class as a building block for your take home, which I'll go to right now because I know some of you head out at 6 here for another class. So for your take home, you're creating an exact same replica of tonight. You're going to call it contacts though, and you're going to add these fields in your app: first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, phone, and email, all at the bottom. So exact same replica. This podcast, by the way, is not a real long podcast, but I created it just as a wrapper for the app. That's all it is. It's 31 minutes. And it goes from start to finish on what we did in class, using the step-by-step sheet and creating the app from scratch. So avail yourself to that as well. Once you're finished with that one, I would suggest, since you're starting the GitHub with tonight's in class, just add to the one that you're working on now with those existing fields. Because the only thing you need to submit tonight for your in class is that you are working, you have started on your project, like it says in number 6. Just submit the word started. That's all I got to do. Cool. I'll try to free hole punches and maybe keep these in a binder possibly. This is how long you should that free hole punch for. Binder if you want. I don't usually like to print stuff, but I think it's beneficial maybe. Basically, UI label, have my contacts. We have to add a UI label. Down here in the office. About 5 or 6 now. Press label over. Home direction.
What do I have to do to drag and drop this?
Okay, all you need to do is, first of all, you have to have a README in there. Click on README, you have to have that. And you scroll down the bottom and commit that. So commit. The README is required. Just drag and drop. Now you're ready to go to upload files. And from this environment is where you can click and drag everything on the right and to the left. Okay. Yeah, good job. Make sure you're like everything that we go. Awesome. Get your My Contacts created, and you're going to add in text to go right below that. So connect with what? So you should see width in there. I'm 7 right now. Should be serious about what I'm talking to. Where's your, Windows. On the high keyboard. There we go. So, just all the stuff on the handout. You have the podcast blocker. Cool, awesome. Yeah, I know some of you are about halfway through your code, if not more. It's probably a good idea to maybe stop and make a save what you worked on, make a GitHub repo on GitHub, and drag and drop your code into your GitHub repo. Remember, when you create a repo, it'll ask you want to create a README for your repo. You always want to create the README. If you don't create a README, you can't upload your files into your repo. I know some of you are loading your app right now, so let me show you on the overhead if it will help some of you on a GitHub question. So I'll go to my GitHub account, and I'll pretend I'm uploading this one for the first time. Okay, so first thing is you want to go to your repository tab. You're already in there. And then click New. And I'll do one for tonight, which was my keyboard. Make sure it's public. Here's what the tricky part is right here. See where it says initialize this repository as README? Make sure and check that. You can do it later, but it's easier to do it now. So again, after you name it, make sure it's public. Then always check this initialize the repository with as a README. When you click create repository, then this is when I reposition my windows, right? I'll have on the left side my Mac, and on the right side my files. So I'm going to close out of my files here to show you. And this is how I always do it, and it works every time. So there's my folder. I'm going to open it up. And I only want what's inside of the folder for the project, which is going to be for everybody in here. The folder, high keyboard, and then the Xcode proj. Those are the two entities you're going to upload. So you'll notice over here in GitHub, I can click create a file. I can upload a file, I can find a file, or clone and download. I want to upload a file. And here's where you're going to take the contents of the folder, not the folder itself, but the contents, and just select them, click and drag over here, release, and it's going to upload all those files. Once you're through, put a commit in here. I'll just put in here first. Publish, my initials, first publish, hit commit. And before you leave tonight, make sure when you've uploaded that you should see in the code section a one commit or two commit actually. One was when you created the repo. Two is when you just did what I just showed you. So there's my first, when I created the repo. Here's the second one, which has all the code in that I just uploaded. Okay, and that's it. Now, when you download that later, here or at home, you can just click the clone, download zip, work on it, and do the exact same thing I just showed you. Just always upload the contents of that folder is all you'll need to do. And then that way you won't have to use the GitHub client, which can be a little clunky sometimes to use, especially in different environments. It's just much easier to do it the way I just showed you. Because it's smart enough to know, by the way, if you only make one file change in your code, it'll tell you that when you upload it, that you only made one file change. So I wanted to make a file change here just to show you. Do it now. Oh, as far as the project, Oh, for your repo?
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. I don't know if I have you call it something on the take home. Let me look here. I just have you started here. Let me look here. Contacts is what I have here, but doesn't really matter to me as long as the contents is fine. If you already named it hide keyboard or something, that's fine. And by the way, good question, because if there is times where you'll want to rename your repo, and it's not real hard to do, I'll show you how you can do that. I'll go to edit here, or settings, I'm sorry, on my repo, and just rename it here. Once I rename it, I can rename it to whatever. I could call it, what is it? Contacts, it's supposed to be. Rename it. Done. Been renamed. And so now I've got my repo, and the latest one is always going to be at the top. Update 2 minutes ago. So that's the quickest way to update your repos each time. So yeah, good question. If you ever rename something weird or on mistake or wrong, it's a lot easier doing it in GitHub than it is anywhere else. So just do it on the GitHub website. Yeah, the first launch is taking a while, I'm sure. What up? Oh, might have just been compiling it. Possibly. You're fine. Compiling or just working. Yeah. It takes a while that first time. That first time it runs. Make sure to save your code so you don't lose it. You can utilize these handouts I gave you, the podcast, which is 20 minutes, goes over start to end, in class. And I have that podcast both on the in-class module and also for the take-home module. So does the handouts help or hurt on the process? Help or hurt? Okay. Again, I don't usually like to print paper, but I think in these cases, it's beneficial because it does benefit you guys. It's hard to look at a document, especially when you're developing something. If we had 2 monitors, it'd be great. But 1 monitor, nah. One of these days, maybe we'll get desks with 2 monitors. That'd be awesome. We have our documents on the left and our program on the right. But until that point, we'll print them out. Print them out. As long as you guys are using them, I'll keep printing them. Well, if you have any questions on anything, let me know. I did email those who are helping with the internship. We're going to try to have a real quick meeting tomorrow night. I emailed everybody about that in Basecamp. Those of you that are helping with that. It's not going to be a real long meeting, just in and out, probably 10, 15 minutes at the most. And so I appreciate those helping with that project. That's awesome. Thank you. What now? We've got a couple projects. I think I told you guys about the couple of them here are working on it or helping. Is a couple mobile app projects on campus that, yeah. And we're going to they're fairly simple apps, but I think it'll be a good experience for everybody. It has time. So, it's going to be a little time involved, but not a lot. I think so far we've got 7. And it's not just in this class. We have some in my 110 class involved, 130 class. So it's kind of a cross-pollination of students. So, yeah. And there'll be some web stuff to create. Some students will do the web stuff. Some will do the social media stuff. And then we'll have some do some app development as well. So, but it's for a speech department. It's the acronym for the app is CODE, C-O-D-E. It's how to create a speech with these 4 pillars, C-O-D-E. I think it's content, something, delivery, execution, something like that. I can't remember the O. But it's based on some TED video the speech department found. Some guy that is an expert in teaching people how to public speak. And the app goes over the 4 pillars. So anyway, that's what we're working with. That one, and then there's another one for the used to be called Upward Bound, but it's basically if students want to know what class they need to take to become an engineer, or become a programmer, or become whatever, Pathways. That's what it's called, Pathways app. That's the second one. What?
That'll be good.
Oh yeah, yeah, it'll be a good experience.